Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually just want to associate myself with your remarks. Well said. I do am an NRA member, so our sentiments are similar on that. And I want to thank the chairman for working on the legislation. Certainly thank you. I do have one question, though, real quickly. On the bump stock issue, we clearly have a technology that makes a legal product an illegal product. I think all of us were surprised to find that out. And as I looked into it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, that was a decision made by the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms people, actually during President Obama's administration. I'm kind of surprised at the decision. Surprised, is our aim here to get them to rethink that decision? Because this clearly ought to be something that's outlawed in my view.
Well, absolutely, and I share your concern about the misuse of these devices that can turn a semi-automatic weapon into something that is like an automatic weapon. So we view this as the first step in gathering more information about it. Is this used in crimes? Obviously, it appears to have been used in the very serious crime in Las Vegas. Are there other instances? And we continue to work with the ATF on what is the best way to go about preventing that from happening. And the study that's called for as a part of this legislation is directed at that. But I believe, I share your concern that we may need to do more.
Okay. Gentleman from New York.
Yes, I want to make two comments. We know, I agree with you totally that the sole function of the so-called bump stock is to make a semi-automatic weapon operate like an automatic weapon. We have banned automatic weapons in this country since the 1930s. I don't think we need a study. This bill provides for study. As far as I'm concerned, that's just a delaying device. We ought to be banning the use of these bump stocks, these bump stocks immediately, because they have no function other than to get around the law. To get around the law that no one disputes. I don't think there's anybody who shouldn't say nobody. Probably there are not too many people who advocate legalizing machine guns and automatic weapons, and that's what this does in effect. So we ought to eliminate it automatically. I just want to comment also on one thing Mr. Sessions says, and I think it's the underlying, there are two underlying problems with this bill. One is the basic problem that we're all talking about, but the other is that this bill, as I said before, doesn't make a standard. What it does, and it doesn't make a judgment, what it does is to use federal power to import the law of any state into a different state, and to deprive the people of that state of the ability to make that judgment. And that is simply wrong as a matter of federalism, not to mention a matter of prudence. The second thing I wanted to say with respect to what Mr. Sessions said is that guns, we've run this experiment now for 40 or 50 years. And you look at the statistics, and I don't know exactly, but they're more or less, the United Kingdom has 146 people killed by guns each year, Japan 75, other countries in the double or triple digits, the United States 30,000. We are not thousands of times more mentally ill than the Germans or the British or the Japanese. That would be a slander on the American people. The frequency of death by guns is directly correlated, and this has been shown, by the availability of guns in society. And you can say that if someone has a gun, law-abiding citizen with a gun will stop a person without a gun, and on occasion that will be true. Will stop a bad guy with a gun. On occasion that'll be true. On occasion the good guy will shoot the wrong person. I'd hate to see a shootout between good and bad people in a subway in New York City, for example. But speaking as a whole, there is no question that you can correlate the presence of guns in society, the availability of guns in society, directly with the homicide rate by guns. And again, how do you explain no other country in the world has a homicide rate by gun exceeding 200, 250, and we do 30,000 a year?
Mr. Vice Chair, if I might make 2 points. First of all, with regard to your point, with regard to bump stocks, I think we're already having an effect because the Department of Justice just today put out a press release announcing that they are reopening the rulemaking process with regard to devices like bump stocks. The Justice Department and ATF begin regulatory process to determine whether bump stocks are prohibited. So that is a positive development that I think is very directly related to the legislation that we have before us. Secondly, with regard to the comments from my friend from New York, the fact of the matter is that the Second Amendment is a constitutional right that extends to all Americans. And the Supreme Court has held that it extends to them for the purpose of self-defense and that it extends to their right to exercise that in all of the states. So I would hate to see states make it more difficult for people to exercise that right. And it is the federal government that has the responsibility of determining how one can transport a firearm across state lines. So I think that's an appropriate thing. And the people who are allowed to do this, the statistics are very, very strong, that these are very, very law-abiding people. And I agree with Chairman Sessions that their presence will help to fight crime and prevent crime and be very, very unlikely that it's going to create additional crimes. I think just the opposite is going to be the case. So thank you.
I think both of you actually only wanted to ask about the one thing, but I think we got a telling glimpse of what will be a very eloquent debate. So thank you very much. Yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I noticed that now Ms. Jackson Lee has